Good afternoon. We're in Rav Kook's Orot Hatorah with Rav Jory's commentary. In the last few shiurim, we've been looking at page 451. Rav Kook was discussing the idea of the Musar Hatorah is built on the Musar Hativi. We addressed that based on the pasuk in Koheles. Shlomo HaMelech HaChacham Mikol Adam said, "Alakim asa es ha'adam yasha ve'bikshu cheshbonos rabim." God made Adam a yasha. It was yasha. Ve'bikshu cheshbonos rabim. And Adam Harishon felt like he, for lack of a better word, he wanted to live an exciting life. The life of a yasha means that you know right from wrong. You know truth from falsity, and you veer all the time to truth and morality, and you veer away from lies and immorality. And it's what they in America they have a phrase called the narrow and straight, the narrow and straight path. Yeah, the straight path is a shtickle narrow because there's no to the left, there's no to the right. It's the straight and narrow. Saying in America, take the straight and narrow. Adam Rishon looked for some action, a little excitement. A little excitement, the Rebbeinu Shalom said, don't eat from this Eitz Hadas Toiv Hara. If you eat from it, you will die. And remember, Adam Rishon is a day old. He's a day old in the sense that he was just created, but he was created as a full-grown human being with the intellect, amazing intellect, God-given intellect. But what he understood about death, we don't know. God said to him, the day you eat from this tree, you will die. What he understood about that, we can't be 100% sure, we don't know. But for example, when Cain decided to kill Hevel, the Gemara says, "Kol demei achicha tzokim alai min ha'adama." The voice of the blood of your brother is screaming to me from the earth. That's what God said to Cain. But it says, "Demei achicha," the bloods of your brother. And the Gemara says, the bloods of your brother, because nobody ever committed murder before that. And Cain didn't know how to kill someone. So he didn't know, do you stab him in the toe? To us it sounds like, if you stab someone in the toe, he's not going to die. But if you're Cain and you want to kill someone, and you don't know how to kill someone because it's never happened before, no one ever did it, you don't know what to do. So you stab him all over the place, you figure, I'll get him in the right place. I stab him here, I stab him here. That's why the pasuk says, "Demei," the bloods of your brother, because he stabbed him all over the place. He didn't know how to kill someone. So we need to understand that we're dealing before, history takes over and people learn from prior generations. There's nothing here. So what Adam exactly understood about you will die the day you eat from this, you understand? Whatever the case is. So Rebbeinu Shalom tells him, I'm making you Yasha. Stay away from the Eitz Hadas Toiv Hara. Now the Rambam, as an example, the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, when he explains the Eitz Hadas Tov Hara, he explains Eitz Hadas Tov Hara in a most unbelievable way that we can have a special appreciation for today. The Rambam, when he wrote the Moreh Nevuchim, he's writing, quote unquote, a philosophy sefer. But it's a Jewish philosophy sefer. So important is the Moreh Nevuchim in world philosophy that in major universities still today, they study the Moreh Nevuchim, obviously in English, but they're still studying today in Goyish philosophy courses. They're studying Maimonides' Guide for the Perplexed. Maimonides quotes Aristotle, why Aristotle is wrong. It's still studied today by Goyim. Maimonides' Guide to the Perplexed. So because he's a philosopher, he's putting on the hat of a philosopher. You need to have common language. Every profession has a common language. For example, CPAs have a language. If you're not a CPA, you don't know what they're talking about. They say FIFO, LIFO, they have words that they discuss. You're sitting there as a client, and the two accountants there, and they say, should we do his books on a LIFO basis or a FIFO basis? You don't know what they're talking about, but you say to yourself, this is mamish. These are mamish go'inim. They talk in Lashonis, LIFO, FIFO. And they talk about the FASB 52. Should we do it FASB 58? How do we account for the depreciation going forward? You say to yourself, mamish, I'm paying $800 an hour here as the Gans Kedai. These people, mamish, know what they're talking about because I don't know what they're talking about. You sit in a lawyer's office and the two lawyers are listening to your case and they say, it could be the way we can win your case is if we use res ipsa loquitur. Okay? And the other one says, no, we're going to have to use negligence per se. Mamish Kedai, $800 an hour. These guys know what they're talking about. I don't even know their language. Every profession developed a language so that no one else should know what they're talking about. You say, these people are going on. Philosophers especially developed all kinds of fancy words, especially in Latin and in Greek. They developed all kinds of fancy words. You should know what they're talking about. And that was Aristotle's Shita. He said this and he wrote this. His Shita was that we speak in a language that the common folk don't understand because they don't have the intelligence to understand it. So when the famous question came up about, we believe as Yidden, a principle of Emunah, is God created the world something from nothing, yesh me'ayin. Aristotelian philosophy doesn't believe in that. They believe the world was created something from something. You can't create something from nothing. So you say, okay, what was the original something? And where did that come from? And where did that come from? And where did that come from? And this is what common folk would ask Aristotle. That's how it's brought down in the books. And at some point Aristotle said, listen, I cannot answer your questions any longer, not because I don't have an answer, because now the depth of the answer is only for philosophers. A layman couldn't possibly understand what the real answer here is at this point, and I can't answer you anymore. So they developed this idea that only certain people can understand what we're talking about. You have to know the jargon. The Rambam, the Posek, the Tzaddik, the Goin, the Talmudist wrote a philosophy book. So in the Moreh Nevuchim, he devotes a portion of Moreh Nevuchim to definitions. When I use this word, this is what the word means. When I use this word, this is what it means. And he translates Hebrew to what the Hebrew word means. In that context, the Rambam says the following. A man came over to me and asked me a kasha. He asked me this. This is in the middle of defining terms. As a man came over to me and said, I don't understand the story of the chet of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. Before the chet of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, don't eat from that tree. He does this terrible affair, he eats from the tree. And after he eats from the tree, it says, what? Their eyes opened and they realized that they were naked, right? So it sounds from the pasuk like they got smarter. Before they ate from the Eitz Hadas, they were so stupid they didn't even know what naked is. And after they ate from the tree they shouldn't eat from, they became intelligent human beings. They understood what naked is and they tried to dress themselves. So because of the Aveira, they acquired intelligence. So the Rambam has a couple of nasty lines for this person's question. And then he says, I want to explain what the word toiv means. Toiv doesn't mean good. It came to mean good, but it's an original meaning. Toiv meant something pretty, something that was attractive to the eye. And Adam Harishon was created to know the difference between bad and good, evil and righteousness, morality and morality. That was the Yosher. He was a straight. And then, which means he knew basically how to deal with objective truth. This is right, this is wrong, this is true, this is false. Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, what does the pasuk say there? Chava saw that the fruit looked nice. If you look at the pasuk, it says she saw this and she saw that. It's about her eyes. The Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, when you ate from it, it made you make decisions on based what you see, not what the truth underlying what you see is. Now you're in a confused state. It looks like this to me, but if I grovel a little underneath, it's not like that. So where does the truth lie? Superficially or beneath the surface? The Eitz Hadas Tov Ra confused Adam Arishan. He no longer knew what the objective truth is, because this looks so pretty on the outside, it must be okay. It tastes so good, it must be okay. It feels so good, it must be okay. And he gave up right and wrong, objectively, for what it looks like. Many, many years ago, when I was probably an early teenager, there was a saying that was in America. It came from a comedian. What you see is what you get. What you see is what you get. If this is what it looks like, you can be assured that this is what you're getting. Don't grovel underneath anything. What you see is what you get. What you see is not what you get. Okay? You can buy a car, and what you see is not what you get. The beautiful woman in the world could be what you see is not what you get. My son showed me last week, he bought a big challah for his family. It was beautiful, but it came from a bakery that he hasn't had the best experience with in terms of taste. But he needed a challah. The bakery was still open. It was a little late Friday, and it was beautiful. So he showed me the challah. I said, I hope it tastes as good as it looks. Right? You never know. The chait of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra is Adam slept in the bed that he made. I made you straight. You opt for confusion. You're going to live a life of confusion. Yes, no, I don't know if it's right, I don't know if it's wrong. Is this moral? Is it immoral? Should I do it? Should I not do it? You gave up Yosha. That was the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. So what Rav Kook was talking about was that there's a fundamental Yosher that a person has. Unfortunately, we've perverted it. But prior to perverting it, the purpose of giving the Torah, as Rav Kook explained, was to build on the foundational right-wrong that was inborn in Adam Arishan. Adam Arishan had a certain morality. He knew right from wrong. And to build on that foundation was the Torah going to be given to Klal Yisrael so they would further understand in greater depths right and wrong, moral and immoral. Of course, when the foundation gets perverted, it's hard to build anything on top of it. So first you have to rebuild the foundation, obviously. So, for example, the Ramchal says in the Das Tevunos, when Adam Arishan was created, he had one job. He was already on an unbelievable spiritual level. What he needed to accomplish was stay away from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, and he would have perfected himself to the level of perfection of a human being that a human being contained. But eating from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, not only didn't he perfect himself to the level a human being can attain, he went down. So now, many, many generations later, we're working to get back to where Adam Arishan was before the Chet. That's the famous Lashon you always hear. Adam Harishon Kodem HaChet. We need to work towards Adam Harishon Kodem HaChet. Getting back to Adam Harishon Kodem HaChet is just the beginning of the work. Because when we get back to where Adam Harishon was before the Chet, then we create the status quo of what was then, and then we still have to perfect ourselves to where Adam could have gotten had he not eaten from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. But in terms of principle, the original morality, the sense of morality, right and wrong, innate in Adam Arishan, was the foundation upon which the Torah was going to be built. And we need to understand that foundational morality, that foundational right and wrong, before you can build something on it. The Svarim give there are a lot of examples of this. We gave this example. For example, Noach. Noach is drunk in his tent. Chum does whatever he does in the tent. Shem and Yefes take a robe and they walk into the tent, and then they turn around backwards and they drop the robe on their father. but they don't walk in straight because they don't want to see their father naked. Who taught them this sense of morality? They went to a shiur. Who taught them this sense of morality? There's something that the human being fundamentally understood, that people should be covered up. The Mauritian realized it after he was naked, but there's a fundamental amount of right and wrong that a person has in him upon which the Torah is built. So now we're on page 454, and Rav Kook is now going to talk about the disassociation that he faced, and that was faced for a long time before him, of this belief that hafachba v'hafachba de kulaba. Rav Drori is going to quote it on page 454. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, hafachba v'hafachba, turn it over and turn it over. Just keep on studying Torah. De kulaba, everything is in the Torah. So that's true. That's absolutely true. Everything is in the Torah. But now, let's talk about Rabbi Yisrael Salanta for a few moments. I'll tell you a Maisa, parenthetically, a Maisa Oyim V'Noira. I was talking to my friend, Rabbi Dr. DePose, radiologist, in the Davens in Eish Kodesh. We talk 2-3 times a week. Talk and learning, what did you find, what did you find? And we were talking about 2 weeks ago about, it's terrible, the machlokes that's going on here, the machlokes between the different parties, the sinas chinam, and between the charedim, what goes on here. We talk like that. About a day or two later, he calls me up and he says, you can't believe what I found. There's a sefer called, I forgot the name of the sefer, it's like 5 or 6 volumes. It's about biographies of the big Balei Musar. He says, I scanned the pages, I'm sending it to you, you're not going to believe what you're going to read. And this is what it says there. It says, we all know there was a big machlokes about Musar. Today, when you sit down at your Shabbos tables, you say, Tatala nu Zagad Vatayra for the Shabbos tables. He says, my Rebbe told me some Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. He said, wow, Eisa Nachas, he can say something of Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. Today it's a double Parshat that you talk about Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. In the 1870s, 1880s was not Parshat you talk about Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. He was a revolutionary. He came up with this crazy idea that during the day you stop learning and you learn a Musa Sefer. What do you mean you stop learning Gemara Rashi Tosfos? What are you doing? You don't stop learning. You want to learn some Musa while you're eating your lunch, you're biting your sandwich, you learn the Sharei Tshuva. You stop Gemara? You need a Musa Seder. The generation needs a Musa Seder. There's so much immorality and perversion in a Musa Seder. And the other side said, what are you talking about? When you learn Gemara Rashi Tosfos, you become moral. When you learn Gemara Rashi Tosfos, you become a good person. When you learn Gemara Rashi Tosfos, you become an honest person. We need Musa Sforim. We're not going to be Mavatal Torah. This was a flaming machlokes in Europe. And they used to do terrible things to Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. Terrible things. Read biography of Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. In Slobodka, the Halakha Slobodka Yeshiva was split. There were Talmidim that held from Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, including Reb Nosson Tzvi Finkel, the Alta from Slobodka, and they learned Musa in Yeshiva, Musa Sforim. They learned for part of the day, they learned Musa. There's a different Chelek in Yeshiva that didn't want to touch Musa. Bittul Torah. The anti-Musars would every so often round up during the night, everyone would sleep, round up all the Musa Sforim that are on the shelf in the base medrash, take them out and bury them somewhere. And the people in Musa have to keep them buying new Sforim. So when we talk today about Ponevezh, they're two sides throwing benches at each other, they're using, fire extinguishers at each other, and the Yassam has to come pick up the fire. What is going on here? That a fight broke out between, a literal physical fight broke out between the pro-Musar and the anti-Musars. literally living next door. It's a story. It's a written story. Literally living next door to the Beis Medrash is Rabbi Yechiel Michal Epstein, the famous Rabbi Yechiel Michal Epstein. Rav Epstein, he is basically the Rosh Hashiva. His wife hears the ruckus going on in the Beis Medrash. She opens the door, she sees it's another fight between the Musas and the anti-Musas. So she wants to break up the fight and get everybody to leave the Beis Medrash. So what does she do? She starts screaming, fire, fire, fire! Yeah. In the hope that everybody will just fire, everybody run out of the Beis Medrash. Now brace yourself. An anti-Musa guy goes over to the wife of the Rosh Hashiva and says, stop screaming. And she keeps on screaming, fire. He pulls out a gun and he puts it to her head and he said, you don't stop screaming, I'm going to shoot you. In Slobodka, in the Beis Medrash, Rosh Hashiva's wife. Okay? It's written in the Sefer. Okay? So I'm talking to Dr. DePose, and he scans me the pages from the story. I say, this is an old time sickness. This already is Sinas Chinam, second Beis Hamikdash. Jews kill each other, right? We say the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of Gili Araya Shvichas Dam, Avodah Zarah, Gili Araya Shvichas Dam. What does that mean? That means that it was prevalent in the first Beis Hamikdash. Jews killed each other. Shvichas Damim. Ad Kedei Kach, the Gemara in Sanhedrin and other place says that the Sanhedrin HaGadol disbanded. They simply disbanded because there were too many murders going on and they didn't want to execute people. They disbanded. So there's, going back to what we were talking about, there's a disassociation that Rav Kook was talking about, and he's going to talk about now. There's a complete disassociation from the basic Elikim Osa Sa'adam Yosha. Rebbe Shalom made people straight. V'heima bikshu cheshboinus rabim. And the human, Adam Rishon was created Yosha. Right is right and wrong is wrong, and Adam Rishon ate from the Eitz Hadas Toivara, and he perverted his life. And through that perversion, he no longer knew what was right and what was wrong. V'chulu v'chulu. When the Torah was given at Har Sinai, the Gemara in Shabbos says, Paskazu Amasam. The infection of the Eitz Hadas Toivara that we just discussed from the Moreh Nevuchim, that infection was cured. And they were back to the level of Adam Rishon Kaitem Achet, and they were not Yidnet Matan Torah. There's no longer Gezeirus Misa. They were not going to die. That was it. End of the Eitz Hadas Tovara, end of the punishment of death. Then they did the Egel. The Medrash says, Achein Ka'adam Tumusam. Now you're going to die again like human beings. But until they did the Egel from Har Sinai, until the Egel, the Gezeirah of Misa was wiped out. No Misa on Jewish people. They again perverted themselves with the Egel. The Eitz Hadas Tovara infection came back, and Nebuch Misa came to the world again. So Rav Kook.
But it says Yetzer Adam Rami Urav.
Yeah.
So the Rami Urav is going to.
You have to understand what Rami Urav means. When Adam Rishon was created, Rami Urav meant one Yetzer Hara, one Nesayin. The Eitz Hadas Tovara.
There was no Yetzer there.
That was it. If once Adam Rishon fell to the Eitz Hadas Tovara, like the Rambam explains, so then Avera Goyveres Avera, right? The Eitz Hadas Tovara didn't end it. Then it became the next thing, and it became the next thing, it became the next thing. So when all the Sforim talk about we need to get back to Adam Rishon Kaitem Achet, right? It's not like, we need to get back to Adam Rishon Kaitem Achet. There's a whole world. There's Gili Araya, Shvichas Dam, Avodah Zarah, Tarfis, Noshim Masurais, a whole world of things that have to be Mesukan to get back. Adam Rishon Kaitem Achet doesn't mean we have to just fix the Eitz Hadas Tovara. There's a world of things that need to be fixed since then. The whole world's gone topsy-turvy.
It's impossible to get back to the state of Adam Rishon Kaitem Achet.
Why is it impossible?
I mean, this is my understanding. Adam Arishon Kodem Achet, that was a level distinguishing between truth and falsehood.
That's what we just talked about. That's the Rambam in Nevuchim.
Today, and since then, the man's Nisayan is distinguishing between Tov and Ra, not truth and falsehood. That man basically can't. If I'm not mistaken, man cannot.
Okay, I'm not sure where you getting that from. The Ramchal.
Maybe I saw it in Rav Leichter's Sefer.
Okay. Okay. We're talking about the Ramchal. That's how the Ramchal. That's what the Ramchal explains. We need to first do tshuva to get back to Adam Rishon Koydem Achet. Then we get to Adam Rishon Koydem Achet. Then we still need to do the second piece of the work, which is what Adam needed to do, to be Masakin Eitz Hadas Tovara. But first you have to get to Adam Rishon Koydem Achet. We're not at the point of getting back to Eitz Hadas Tovara.
Could it be maybe most of Mashiach, man
whenever it happens, we need to do our effort in order to get back to Adam Rishon Koydem Achet. And then the Rabban Shalom will fill in the rest of the pieces. But that's our avodah. So once the fundamental right and wrong that Adam Rishon had of Elokim Asas Adam Yashar, once that got perverted, the Torah, which is built on that original foundation of basic Yashrus, the Torah itself doesn't have a proper foundation because the Yashar of Adam has been perverted. So we need to fix that basic Elokim Asas Adam Yashar. And then on top of that, we have a whole Torah that goes deeper and deeper and deeper to teach you what a real Yashar is. But there's an innate sense of Yashar. We just saw as an example Shem and Yefes, basic understanding of morality. So Rav Kook and generation before that, we're talking about this disassociation. A disassociation from this, what we call the innate Musar Tivi. People should know right from wrong. I was on vacation with my wife years ago. I think we were in Nariya. And we went into one of these stores that just sell odd names. So I'm going to the store. I think Yosef Simons may have seen it. It's in my house. In the store there's a piece of wood. It's about this big. And painted on the wood is one word. Parshat. And I have that hanging in my house. Parshat. Can we keep things simple? Right? This is where man's suffering comes from. The confusion. Do I do this? Do I do this? Elikim asas adam yasher vein bikshu cheshbonos rabim. Can we think about this in the most simplistic terms? Simple. Let's think about it. Is this right or is it wrong? Let's really talk about simple. Is it right or wrong? So, for example, we spoke 2 weeks ago, Parshat Shlach, in the Chumash here. We mentioned the Ramban's Kasha. The Ramban asks, what was the Chet of Bnei Yisrael by the Meragel? It's a very long Ramban, what the Chet was, why they sent it, what Moshe thought, hold on. But then he mentions the following. Moshe Rabbeinu sends 12 people. Okay. He sends them with questions. They come back, they answer the questions. 10 people say we can't do this. 2 people say we can. What did Moshe Rabbeinu teach these Yidden? Achrei Rab Lahatos. When there's a shayla, whether you do something, you follow the majority. That's how we always paskin. You, Moshe Rabbeinu, pick 12 people. 10 people say no. 2 people say yes. We don't think we should go. What exactly was the chet here? So we read inside the Chedush Yarim, the first Ger Rebbe, he died in 1856. The Chedush Yarim said that a person has to have the ability to believe in the Rebbeinu Shel Olam al pi derech haposhut. You have to have a basic, simple belief in God. You want to see what the land looks like, you want to get a report, fine. But the Rebbeinu Shalom said you should go. It's Avos Chol V'Dvash. You take that finger that you use when you're learning Tosfos and you put the finger down and you say, I hear the report, we're going. The Rebbeinu Shalom said we should go. The report is not the exact one I expected, but I'm going. I mentioned today in the women's shir, the whole reason we have Eretz Yisrael and that we live in Eretz Yisrael is based on emunah. The Rebbeinu Shalom at the Bris Bein Absarim came to Avraham Avinu and said, I'm going to give this land to you and your children, and we're going to make a covenant about it. And part of the covenant, Avraham Avinu falls asleep, and he sees Eimach Hashecha Gedol Neifelas Alav. The Medrash says Avraham Avinu was shown Golus Bovel, he was shown Golus Poras, he was shown Golus Yavon, he was shown Golus Roimi. And not only was he shown that, he was told very specifically about Mitzrayim. The word Mitzrayim is not used, but he said your children are going to be slaves for 400 years and oppressed. And then the Rebbeinu Shalom also says to him, but you're not going to see any of this. You're not going to live to see this. And Rashi says you're not going to see any of this. You're going to die and be buried before your children get the land, and before they inherit the land, before they leave. The whole thing's going to happen before you die. You willing to make a covenant with me? Okay, let's move away from the Bris Bein Absarim. You're in a lawyer's office. You want to sell your car. And the lawyer's drafting a document. And the buyer says to the seller, listen, it's a wonderful car, I love it. I want to buy it. 10,000 shekel Peseda. I'm going to give you 7,000 shekel right now, we signed the contract. 3,000 shekel I'll give you Yetz Hashem to your grandson when he's bar mitzvah, Yetz Hashem, tikava b'seiva toiva, you'll be buried, you'll be happy, you'll die good old age. The rest of the money I'm going to give to your grandson. Peseda, you ready to? Are you crazy? Are you crazy? You're promising me something, you want to make some kind of deal with me, and don't worry about it. It's going to come. That Bris Bein Absarim was made in the year 2018. Avraham Avinu was born in 1948. Easy year to remember. Avraham Avinu was born in 1948. He was 70 at the Bris Bein Absarim. The Bris Bein Absarim occurred in 2018. And at the Bris Bein Absarim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Avraham Avinu, I'm going to give you a piece of land that goes from the Nile all the way to the Euphrates, up to Baghdad. Going to be Badatz Glat Kosher hotels near Baghdad. From Nahar, Mitzrayim, Adonogol, Hadgol, Nahar Pras. And this land is right now occupied by 10 nations. And the Rebbeinu Shalom spells it out. I'm giving you this nation, this nation, this land, and I'm giving you 10 nations. After the Bris Bein Absarim, anybody ever hear about 10 nations again? What does the Torah always talk about? 7. What happened to the other 3? Keni, Kenisi, Kadmoini. There are 3 nations that never ever were conquered. Not only weren't they conquered, but when you learn Parshas Devarim, the Rebbeinu Shalom said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Keni, Kenisi, Kadmoini, which is Ammon, Moav, and Edom. Rashi brings it down. Rebbeinu Shalom says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're not allowed to touch Ammon, Moav, or Edom. That's when Mashiach comes. Meantime, what about your promise? At that time was almost 1,000 years. It's almost 800 years. It's 800 years since you told Avraham Avinu you're going to get from the Nile to the Euphrates, and now you're telling me that 3 of the countries that you promised, when Mashiach comes. And when's Mashiach coming? Don't worry about it, keep my promise. Avraham Avinu says, say it in the year 2018, he says, listen, if you say that it's going to be, it's going to be. Let's shake on it. Let's shake on it. I believe you. And they walk through the Bris Bein Absarim. The Shekhinah comes with Avraham Avinu. They walk through between the animals split apart, and it's a Bris Bein Absarim. And Avraham Avinu says, it's a deal. I believe you 100%. The whole Matnas Eretz Yisrael, the whole Bris Milah Absorim is based on Avram Avinu, Zayd Avram Avinu being able to say, I believe you. I trust you. And our continued ability to be here is based on that trust. So, there are things that are Parshat. Avram Avinu had a simple emun in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What happens to Moshe Rabbeinu? Rebbe Shalom comes to Moshe Rabbeinu at the snare, at the burning bush, and he says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're going to take these people out of Mitzrayim. Rashi, 7 days Moshe Rabbeinu was arguing with God. I'm not going. You got the wrong person. Aaron is older than me. He's wiser than me. He's a bigger tzaddik than me. No, says he going. Rebbe Shalom, how can I go? I don't even know what your name is. And if I go to the Jewish people, they're going to say, who sent you? What's his name? I don't even know what to call you. Fine. I'm going to teach you what my name is. Yud Kei Vav Kei, Aleph Hey, Yud Hey. I'm going to teach you all my names. You ready to go? No. I don't want to go. 7 days just go back and forth. Tov Vayicharaf Hashem. Baruch Shalom says you're going. Finished. The dialogue is over. Our session is over. You're going. Moshe Rabbeinu goes to Par and says, the God, and here's his name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. He says, you're letting the people go. Par says, I don't know what you're talking about. Let me look in my book of gods. Yud, I don't see Yud Kei Vav Kei here. I don't know what you're talking about. And you know what? You're such a mechutzif that until now I used to be a good guy. I used to give straw to these people and they would build bricks. You know what? Now they're going to collect their own straw, make their own bricks, and the amount of bricks that they used to make when I gave them the straw is going to be the same amount now. So if you made 100 bricks per person beforehand, now they got to get the straw and make the bricks. How are you supposed to gather your own straw and make the same number? I don't want to hear from nothing. You don't make the bricks, you get whipped. Moshe Rabbeinu walks out of Paro's palace and people are cursing him already. What did you do to us? You made things worse. Moshe Rabbeinu goes back to Rebbeinu Shalom. What does Moshe Rabbeinu say to Rebbeinu Shalom? What did you? I begged you not to send me for 7 days. Why did you do such a terrible thing to these people? So Rebbeinu Shalom says to Moshe, beginning of Parshat Ve'era, Vaydaber Elokim al Moshe, Elokim, Midas Elokim, the Midah of Din, speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, Va'era Lavrom El Yitzchak V'kel Shaka Yushmi Yud Kei Vav Kei Lo Nadati Lahem. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Rashi brings it on the second shot. Rebbe Shalom said to Moshe Rabbeinu, imagine this. Rebbe Shalom and Moshe Rabbeinu have just basically started a relationship, right? Rebbe Shalom says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Chaval al da'advdin v'lo mishtachchin. Woe to me, I'm missing Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. What happened to the good old timers? I have to deal with you. Those good old timers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You know how much trouble they had in their lives? You know how many things I told them to do and they constantly hit bumps in the road? I tell them this, it doesn't go straight. I tell them this, doesn't go. I tell Avram to do the Akedah, he doesn't come to me. None of them complain to me. None of them talk to me like you talk to me. The first mission I sent you on, there's a little bump in the road, you're already complaining to me. Ay, chaval. I wish I had the old timers back. I wish I had them back. And the Ramban in Parshat Eretz talks about the idea of Emunah Pshuta, Parshat. I trust God. Is there a bump in the road? Here's a bump in the road. But the bump in the road is only a human experience. Was there a bump in the road in God's world? There's no bump in the road. Because the whole idea of Yud Kei Vav Kei is God was, is, and will be. So there's no such thing as a passage of time. There is no time in God's world. Everything is happening. There's no bumps in the road. In the human experience, things are going wrong. As time passes by, things are going wrong. There's ups, there's downs. In God's world, there's no ups and downs because there's no passage of time. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, there's a bump in the road here. I don't know if I can continue. So Rebbeinu Shalom says, you know what? I really miss those old timers. Those old timers, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, they had emunah pshuta. They believed that if I said something, it was going to happen the way I said it. If there are bumps in the road, say it, but it's going to happen. Ad kedei kach Avraham Avinu believed me, and I told him that what the promise I'm making to you is going to happen after you die. And he still made a bris bein absarim with me. That's not what I'm saying now, just Rashi's. So there became a disassociation from the basic pragmatic understanding, like by the Meraglim, basic pragmatic understanding. Emunah Pshuta. The Rabbanah Shalom said this, Emunah Pshuta. And we mentioned when we read the Chidush Yarim said that before Mashiach comes, it's very possible we'll have the same kind of nisyonis, same kind of test. We're going to return to Eretz Yisrael. He's writing this in the 1850s. We're going to return to Eretz Yisrael. And they're going to be grosser mention. The Meraglim were not Kolev Yeshua and 10 bums. They were Kolev and Yeshua and 10 more Kolev and Yeshua types. And they fadrei Klal Yisrael a cup. And the Jews died in the midbar because of those 10 people. For Ulai, he says that Koydem Mashiach, we're going to have the same Nisyonis. There's a Nisayon of just an Emunah Pshuta. What does Emunah Pshuta mean? And this is really, Rav Hutner talks about this in the Parshat Yitzchak. Emunah Pshuta, the tachlis of Emunah is to bridge a gap. That's what Emunah is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says something to you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes us a promise in the Torah. No. What bridges the time for the human being between God's promise and God keeping His promise? How do you keep the fire alive that you believe it's going to happen? That's your emunah. If God said something, it may take 2,000 years for it to happen, but it's going to happen. Emunah bridges the period of time from the promise to the kingdom of the promise. That's what Rav Hutner says in the Parshat Yitzchak. So there became a disassociation from this Emunah Pshuta. So now let's read a little of what Rav Drori writes on this piece of Rav Kook. Anachnu moitzim, on page 454, Anachnu moitzim ba'olam anshe Torah hamaminim sheyimtzu rak b'Torah es kol dri shesem haruchnis v'musarius. We find in the world of Torah, now Rav Kook was writing in the 1920s, Rav Drori Baruch Hashem Adnei V'Esim Shana is still alive, Rashiva in Hesder Kiryat Shmona. He's saying you can find, and this has been like this for centuries, in the Torah world, in the yeshiva world, you find this bottom line belief that you need to know nothing about what's going on in the world. It doesn't, I'm not interested in what's going on in the world. Zeh lo nogea li. I told the story last week. Anybody wants to see it, courtesy of Yosef Simons, you can go to YouTube, you can see last week's share. I think it was last week I told the story about being in the orthotics store and getting myself a set of orthotics, and a young man says to me, I don't really care what's going on here, not my business. Okay, so but people are dying, rockets are flying, Jews are getting it. Not my business. So you find, unfortunately, in the world of Torah. Now, why are we reflecting on the world of Torah? Because that's where, in the olam of Torah, we would hope that those people that are olam of Torah would have a deeper feeling and a deeper sense of understanding that Klal Yisrael is nagaya them.
Isn't that the world of Kabbalah where everything is one? If Hashem is one, everything is one. So
I didn't say anything about Kabbalah.
So I'm saying, instead of saying the Torah world, say maybe the Kabbalah world. Because
it's not the Kabbalah world, it's the Torah world. I think the word Kabbalah.
Isn't that according to Kabbalah? Everything is one.
I don't know. If a Chiloni is getting killed in Tel Aviv, it's my business. As much as my business as if a Talmud is being killed in Ponevezh, in Bnei Brak.
But as far as my understanding, according to Kabbalah, Hashem is one. Everything is God.
This has nothing to do with one. Nothing to do with one. Are you worried about yourself?
Yes.
Are you worried? Are you worried about your wife?
I am, but say I'll be Kabbalah.
What does that have to do with Kabbalah about worrying about another Jew?
Everything's godliness. So whatever happens, it doesn't.
No godliness. No godliness. You're worried about another person. This is what Rav Kook is talking about. The basic understanding of Adam Harishon Yashar, without getting the grubber finger into, is there a one? Is everything a one? Is it Kabbalah? We're all human beings. We're concerned about each other. Kal v'chomer, we're concerned about one yid for another. I need Kabbalah to tell me that I need to worry that everybody should be well and good.
No, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying, according to Kabbalah, if everything is one, then everything is godliness. And so it's all the same. It doesn't make a difference what happens.
What does that mean? I really don't understand what you're talking about. I don't understand what that means, that if everything is one, I don't have to be worried about anything. Okay, if you want to understand what you're saying and why what you're saying is wrong, so if you know where to find, there's a sefer called Chalban. It's a Kabbalah sefer written by the Chalban. In last week's Parshat on Korach, he talks about this exact idea. What you're saying was exactly what Korach went around saying. You take a look in the Chalban on Parshat Korach. It's a Kabbalah sefer.
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of Kabbalah.
We don't talk Kabbalah here.
I'm not a Makubal.
I
agree with you. I'm not this so.
This is what we try to deal with here every Tuesday in Rav Kook. Can we get back to Parshat? Can we get back to before I talk about the Spheres and the Partsufim, can we just understand Bereshis Bara Elokim? And that's what he's addressing here. That basic Yosha. Hey nitlim b'mama hafachba v'hafachba dekulaba. These people put their emphasis on the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, hafachba v'hafachba dekulaba. Turn it over and keep on learning Torah. Everything is in the Torah. And it is in the Torah. It's now going back to Rabbi Yisrael Salanta and Musa. Rabbi Yisrael Salanta wrote a sefer, a little pamphlet called Igeres HaMusa. And he's trying to address the need to learn Musa. As we said, there was mamish. Today, Rabbi Yisrael Salanta is, you have a shtickle Torah, Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, Gishmak, tell me. In the 1870s, 1880s, you weren't so easy to quote Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. You get a patch in the face for talking Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. So he's also under what he Igeres HaMusa, to try to convince people to learn Musa. And he says the following. I'm rephrasing, but he says the following. Rabbi Akiva didn't need a Musa Sefer. How did he become a finer Yid? How did he become a moral person? Because he learned Shor Shenogach Es HaPorah. When Rabbi Akiva learned Perek, Shor Shenogach, he's saying it's an example. Rabbi Akiva is learning about how much do you have to pay when an ox gores a cow. How much should you pay? Now, when I start going into Gemara Rashi Tosfos, I say, how much you have to pay? You have to pay so much. And the end of my learning, I'm not going to talk Lashon Hara. It was a Musa Shmuz on Lashon. Where did Lashon Hara, Musa Shmuz come from Shara Nazapara? But Rabbi Yisrael Salanta says that these people, when they learned Torah, there was a hafachba, the kulaba. In Torah, every single ois in Torah, every single letter in Torah, every single message in Torah teaches you a halacha, teaches you an agadata, teaches you a musa, teaches you how to be a better person legamri. It'll stop you from talking Lashon Hara. Came the time where learning Shor Shenogach HaPorah became a pilpul, and people no longer were able to digest the Musa out of Shor Shenogach HaPorah. Came Balei Musa. Take the Mesil Shisharim. What's the Mesil Shisharim? It's a collection of Gemaras from all over Shas, and Mishnahs all over Shas, and Midrashim all over Shas, on different subjects, and you have to learn it so that you get the message. Why couldn't I learn it as I was learning Shas? One is in Brachas, one is in Nida. Eventually I'll learn Gan Shas and Gan Medrash Rabbah. I'll know all of these quotes, and I'll become a better person. It's not going to happen, Rabbi Yisrael Salanta said. It's like a rabbit. Or lahavdil, we should know from these things. A termite. They said that there's an infestation in termites in Petach Tikva. It was on the news. There's something called the super termite. This is like, in Israel you don't get termites. In Israel you have to get the super termite. Like in America you have cockroaches. Here you have these huge animals that look like cockroaches. Everything's bigger in Israel. They have this thing called super termites that are in Petach Tikva. They're mamish, not only wood, they bore into concrete. And they have pictures of it, and they have a picture of it. They showed it on Orot, a picture of it. If you see any of these things anywhere, you should contact the Israeli Environmental Protection Agency right away, because they're going to come out and check the whole neighborhood, because there's a place in Petach Tikva, a couple of blocks that literally no roofs, it's completely destroyed. So if you see any of them, you're supposed to call them up, and they come and they're going to check where they are. Let's take a rabbit. A rabbit loves to eat wood. Can you eat wood? Why? Because Rabban Shalom didn't put the correct enzymes in your stomach to be able to digest wood. So the wood would go in your mouth, and the wood would come out the other side, and it would do zero for you, and you would be happy if you didn't have to go to the hospital. But you don't have the enzymes to digest wood. You can't break it down. A rabbit has a bracha. He can eat wood, digest it, and it makes him healthy. It's like eating a tuna fish sandwich. There was a time Rabbi Akiva was able to learn Shorosh Nogres Hatorah, and his neshama digested Shorosh Nogres Hatorah. This piece of Gemara is teaching me how much you pay for the cow, and it's teaching me this, and it's teaching me not to talk Lashon Hara, because the Torah, when you break it down with all the enzymes, everything is there. Hafach ba v'hafach ba dekula ba. But as time passed by, Rabbi Yisrael Salanta said, how come we learn Shorosh Nogres Hatorah? We don't learn. Doesn't stop us from learning, stop us from talking Lashon Hara. Now, he didn't know it yet. Why would the Chafetz Chaim have to write a Shmiras HaLashon? Why do you have to write a Shmiras HaLashon? Rabbi Akiva learned Chafetz Chaim Shmiras HaLashon. He never learned Chafetz Chaim Shmiras HaLashon. Did Rabbi Akiva stay away from Lashon Hara? 100%. Why? He learned Shorosh Nogres Hatorah, Rabbi Yisrael Salanta says. But we don't have the neshamas to digest Gemara that way anymore. Now we need Musa Svarim to be able to teach us right from wrong. So the hafachba, the kulaba that Rav Drori is talking about is absolutely true. But you have to have those enzymes in your neshama to break everything down to know right from wrong. Without that, you're not going to be able to do it. So the first level is that foundation of Elokim Osir Sa'odam Yashar, the innate sense of right and wrong, upon which the Torah can be built, and the depth of the Yashar can be taught. But if we completely detach ourselves from the simple, basic right and wrong, the simple emuna pshuta, these simple basic things that we really have inside us, and we make everything into a pilpul and a drasha, then we pervert ourselves. There are certain times where the word Parshat is Parshat. God said we should go into Eretz Yisrael. 10 people say we shouldn't. Say it. We hear, we're going. At certain times there's something in it, and I'll leave you with this. Forget about the psak. The psak's not important. There was a yid, I forgot his name, but he wrote a sefer. The sefer is called Dor Revi. It's a famous sefer, but nobody wants to talk about the author. The Dor Revi, we just mentioned the pasuk at the Bris Bein Absorim. It says, Dor Revi Yashuvu Heina. Hashem said to Avram Avinu, you're going to die, you won't see this, and the 4th generation will come back to Eretz Yisrael. Dor Revi. So he called the sefer Dor Revi. Why did he call it Dor Revi? Because he was the 4th generation from the Chassam Sofer, the Heilige Chassam Sofer. So he's in Hungary, the bastion of anti-Zionism, right? The bastion. Pre-Medina, post-Medina, bastion of anti-Zionism. Anybody who became pro-Zionist in Hungary was banished. Mamish banished. And all of them ended up going to that time Palestine, and they say themselves and their families. One of these, and there are the Eim Habodim Smecha, the Dor Revi, the whole list of the you won't believe this. We'll talk about it a different time. The Munkatcher Rebbe. Okay? The Munkatcher Rebbe's father, I believe it's this Munkatcher Rebbe who's fire anti-Medina, fire, Munkatch. Yeah? His father was the Munkatcher Rebbe. And his father got dethroned as a young man as the Munkach Rebbe because he spoke pre-Medina about, maybe it's a good idea, we can save ourselves there. And they made his son the Rebbe like at 17. And he ran away to Eretz Yisrael. And we just talked about Petach Tikva. I think Petach Tikva, there's a shul named after him. He became the Rav of Petach Tikva when he escaped to Palestine. And there's a whole sefer about him, Divrei Meroivus. There's a whole sefer written about him. People that left and came here saved themselves. So this year, Dor Revi, 4th generation, Chasam Sofer, comes to Eretz Yisrael. And he writes a sefer called Dor Revi, which is a famous Pirush on Masechta Chulin. And most yeshivas will have it. It's a famous sefer Masechta Chulin, a Lamdash sefer Masechta Chulin, and he has a very famous introduction to Masechta Chulin. Everybody likes to learn the sefer because it's a Shmaka sefer Chulin, but nobody wants to read the introduction to it because there's very controversial statements in the introduction. Okay, I'm surprised they still print it with the introduction. They haven't taken that out, but they still print it. But nobody learns the introduction. This Dor Revi, this person, he also wrote Sha'al Tshuvas. And he has, in the middle of a tshuva, he has the following halachic discussion. Why we don't need to know now. Hypothetical. You're on Gilligan's Island. Everybody remember Gilligan's Island? Yeah. You're on Gilligan's Island. But on Gilligan's Island, forget about the cast that was there. Gilligan's Island only has 2 Jews on it. There are 2 Jews on an island. And there's no food and water left. There are only 2 choices now. You're going to kill some rodent running around and you eat, or you're going to find a bear, whatever you're going to find. You're going to find cockroach, whatever you're going to find. And you're going to eat tarfus. Sure. The other choice is you're going to kill your friend and you're going to eat him. If you're medactic in the pure Shulchan Aruch, you should kill and eat your friend. Why? Because, forget about the Ritzicha issue, we talk about the eating issue. I'm sorry, let's forget about killing your friend. Make it easier. 2 Yidden Gilligan's Island, no food left, one of them dies of starvation, and now you have his body, and you have a bunch of cockroaches you can eat. What should you eat? So, al pi halacha, you should eat the body. There's a human meat's not kosher or treif. He's dead. You can cut some of his flesh off, roast it, and eat it. It's not fleshik, it's not milachik. There's no shchita. It's barbarism, but there's maybe an issa d'rabbanan to eat human flesh, but an issa d'oraisa is not to eat human flesh. A cockroach, a rabbit, it's a d'oraisa, treif. Now you're the paisik. What should this guy do? Eat his friend that just starved to death, or eat the cockroach? Nope. Paskin. Okay. He say, the halacha says that I'm going to eat my friend. Okay, eat your friend.
In Nidl Hamet, there's Nidl Hamet.
All right. Also, it's not going to be doicha issa d'oraisa of a cockroach. A cockroach could be 6 lavin. So we won't say what his psak is, but he says, there's something else that's involved in these kind of questions, and that's Parshat. Halacha is here to define for us what God wants you to do in a specific situation. This is when you put on your tefillin, this is how you take off your tefillin, this is how you put on your tefillin, and now you're in this situation. God is watching what you're doing. Does he want you to eat your body, or does he want you to eat the cockroach? That's a very difficult question to ask, because usually we're not allowed to ask that question, because the halacha is always the answer. But he raises this issue. What happens in these kind of situations where al pi pshuta yasha, you understand deep down that you need to eat the cockroach? That's not what God would want you to do, to eat your friend up alive, to eat your friend up in a barbarian way. And I'm only raising this not for a halachic purpose, but but this idea that there are certain things that we innately inside can understand. There's a right and a wrong and a moral and immoral. How far can we take that understanding? Okay, we can talk about it. But we understand that there's, and this is where people grow. People grow in their yashrus. We say, oh, he's a yasha. He's such an adam yasha. The word tzaddik is a freebie today. Moreinu v'Rabbeinu is a freebie. One of the last weddings that Rav Shach was at, Zechron Tzaddik Livracha. So he didn't go to weddings. It was a family wedding. Otherwise, he didn't go to weddings. He's sitting next to Shamash. Everybody that got called up for a bracha, he said, Moreinu v'Rabbeinu, Rosh Hashiva, 1, 2, 3. So the last person gets called up, Moreinu v'Rabbeinu. So after the chuppah was over, Shach said to Shamash, I'm Parshat ready to go. If the Baruch Shalom wants to take me now, I'm ready to go. I see there are 7 Moiritika Go'inim that are still left behind to take my place. Everybody is a Moirenu, Rabbeinu, Hagoin, Hamiti, Hatzadik. Yosha. How many times do you hear a person complimented, he's a Yosha? He's a tzaddik, he's a goin, he's a Talmud Chacham, he's a this, he's a this. How many times do you hear a person say, he's a Yosha? He's straight and narrow. And that's how man was created. It's a compliment. Elokim also is a Adam Yosha. The guy is a Yosha. Because we already sense that we're not Yashras anymore. A person works towards Yashras, and Yashras, part of Yashras, just push it, the straight and the narrow. And that's the foundation upon which we build. Bali Neder will continue next week. Unless you get an email in advance. I may be away next week, I'm not exactly sure. But we'll assume that there is a shir. If there's not a shir, I will send out an email. Everybody have a wonderful week.